you want to say hello? Do you want to say hello, do you? Do you? Do you? Yeah. Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me for today's video. Today I'm going to be doing some more responses to Ethony's hashtag 31 days of tarot. I'm a little bit behind, but I think it's okay because I'm just going to pace myself. I'm going to put some of the prompts together, and we've had a bit of a tough week here in the UK. As I'm sure you all know, we've had an announcement earlier in the week about being locked down again, and as a mum of two, I'm now homeschooling and juggling that with them and like life, and it's just kind of chaotic. So it's just been quite a challenging week juggling the homeschooling with life and work and such, and yeah, planning ahead because I'm not entirely sure how long it will go on for, but it is starting to feel a little bit weird now because the children have missed out on quite a bit of school. So yeah, it's worrying, but you know, just trying to stay as calm as possible, and yeah, balance was my word of the year, and so I'm trying to remind myself of that every day and trying to stay as balanced as possible, which I must admit I'm not always able to do as well as I would like. Anyway, let's just get right on into the prompts. So prompt number 4 is your top 5 tarot books of 2020, ones you purchased and or were released in 2020. So I'm not going to put these in order because that is just too much for my brain to kind of fathom at this moment, and so I'm just going to share them with you. So first up, Rachel Pollock's 78 Degrees of Wisdom. This is the newer edition, so I actually picked this up last year and read the whole thing, and I absolutely love Rachel Pollock and her writing. I find it really easy to understand and to access, and it's a simple book to navigate if you do want to dip in and out of it. I did read it cover to cover, but then I find that I frequently refer back to it often, and I think that it deep dives into quite a few of the more elusive cards that, you know, have quite a lot of depth to them, like the High Priestess and such. There's such a lot of interesting information about the origins of that card in here, and there's just so much in this book. And towards the end she talks about her actual work with clients, and she talks about some of the readings that she's done, and it's just such a great book, and I think this is probably my favourite tarot book that I've ever read. I read some when I was younger, and there was one particular tarot book that I cannot remember what it was, but it was the first book that I ever read about tarot, and I'm not sure, it could have been 2 books. It was either this book, which is the Terry Donaldson Step-by-Step Tarot, which I do like. It was either this book, but with a different cover, or it was the Complete Book of Tarot, the origins, meanings, divinatory significance of the card, and how to use them in readings. But the first book that I learnt from when I was 17, I did lose it. I'm not sure where it ended up, so I'm not entirely sure what the first book was, but I had these 2, not listed here, but they are good books that I do reference now and again. Next up for 2020 is the Holistic Tarot by Venable. I did pick this up in 2020. I dipped in and out. I have not read this cover to cover because it is very deep and in-depth, but it is fascinating. She just goes into so much depth, and I really do appreciate her work. I missed out on the Spirit Keeper's tarot deck, but I did download the images from her website, and I created my own deck of the mages because she has the mages on her website basically that you can download. So I then created my own copy of the mages, and I ordered the medium white book, and I've read quite a lot of that whilst working with the Spirit Keepers, and I found that so interesting. So it's kind of a little bit easier to digest in that size as well. This is the medium white book for the Spirit Keepers Tarot, and I think this is a little bit easier to access because it's slightly smaller. But yeah, I do find Venable's work really in-depth and obviously very academic, and it's a lot to chew on. So I'll probably be nursing this for the next 5 years, to be honest. Next up, a book I haven't read yet, but I'm very excited to delve into it, is The Tarot, History, Symbolism and Divination by Robert M. Place. There was another book I believe that I wanted to read by him, but this is the one that I found on Amazon, and I think that I saw Jess from Stellar Tarot recommending this last year as well, and I think I kind of picked it up after watching her recommendation, and I was so excited to get a book by Robert M. Place as well because I really do like his decks. I don't have any of his decks, but I find the alchemical kind of correspondences to be really interesting, so I am really excited to read this. I'm planning to read this year. It's on my list. Next up is 365 Tarot Spells, Creating the Magic in Each Day by Sasha Graham, and I picked this up this year, and I really like this book because you can dip in to it as and when, and there are different spells and exercises and things for each day. So on September 5th you've got Find a Mentor spell, so you use the Page of Pentacles, you use the Hermit card and a green apple, and then it's got visualization and meditation that goes into it, so you can kind of do magic with your spreads, and it's just such a lovely way to kind of open up the world of tarot and sort of connect that to your manifestation practice if you have one, or your magical practice if you have one. And for a while I was very intrigued how I could use tarot more in spell work, so I have tried a few of these, and there are spells for all sorts of different things. So let's go to the day. So on the 8th of January it's the Get Out of Debt spell with the 10 of Wands, the Knight of Pentacles and the King of Pentacles. So this is what it looks like, and it's just really fun. I really appreciate Sasha Graham's work. I really like her decks, and so I was thrilled to get this one. I think she's got another one as well. She's got the Tarot Spreads book, which I really do want to get as well at some point, but this is just a really fun one to dip in and out of, so I'm excited to use this more in 2021 as well. And finally, a favourite guidebook that I read right at the end of 2020 was the Hoodoo Tarot, and this accompanies the deck. Essentially I wanted to read this thoroughly before I started delving into it and working with it. I also wanted to do a walkthrough, but at the same time I really wanted to make sure that I understood what I was talking about a little bit more, and just give it as much time as I could to sort of process it and really give it, you know, what it deserves in terms of explaining and showing the deck. So this is by Tanya Lee McCullough, and it's just a fantastic guidebook. There are some really amazing spreads in here, and it sort of explains all about these different figures that make up the Elders, which is the major arcana. It's got a little bit at the beginning about like the history of where hoodoo comes from, and the author explains how they once talked about hoodoo as a folk magic, but actually that they'd correct themselves now and explain it as a culture and inheritance with a distinct lineage in North America. And it talks about the history of colonial America and how the different races and the different groups of people came together, and what the culture was like at different points in time and stuff. It's a very kind of nice way to sort of dip your toe into learning about hoodoo. I do have some other books on hoodoo that I have started to read as well to learn more, and I find it very interesting, and this deck is just beautiful. I love the art in this deck, and I think this guidebook is so fantastic. So this is a favourite for me, and I want to be working with the deck a lot in 2021 as well, and deepening my understanding and my knowledge and just learning as much as I can, really. So those were my favourite books. So the next prompt is the card that stalked you and why in 2020. And I had kept a record of the cards that I got every day last year, but I found it very overwhelming to go through and look at my code and figure out the minor arcana. So I have selected mine from the major arcana because that was a lot easier to tally it up. In terms of the minor arcana, I do think I've got an abundance of swords, in all honesty, but I would probably have to spend quite a few hours to figure out exactly what that was, and nothing other than like a king really pops into my mind, but there's probably a reason why the king is popping into my mind. So I'm gonna take a guess that potentially the King of Swords stalked me from the minor arcana. But from the major arcana there was one clear, distinct stalker, and that was the Star, which I would absolutely not expect to be the case at all, considering the way last year went. It's such a beautiful card. It's obviously one of my favourites. I think it's one of everyone's favourites, and I think in every deck it's kind of the card I look for along with other cards, you know, and usually the Star card just blows me away because it's so beautiful in pretty much every deck. The Star appeared 14 times for me, so that was overwhelmingly the majority, and after that the Fool got 13, Temperance got 12, Death got 12, so those four were really the leaders in terms of like appearing in my readings. But the Star and the Fool, Death and Temperance, you know, I feel like there's a lot there about balance, of course, with Temperance. There's change with the Death card. There's this kind of like newness and this sort of like adventurous spirit from the Fool, and then there's this hope and this overwhelming spirit of light and love and shining that light. And it's kind of interesting doing this exercise actually, because I feel like it also reminded me that there was a lot of light last year in my life, and perhaps when you sort of look at 2020 as a whole, it's kind of overshadowed by some of the things that happened, but there were some wonderful things that happened as well. And maybe this is the final sort of message from 2020 that's sort of like, you know, don't remember 2020 like that. Like, let's remember some of those highlights as well and find joy in those little moments where, you know, you got to spend time with your little ones and stuff, which was lovely, whilst also being challenging. So yeah, I think that this was a little bit of a like prod, just doing this exercise. It was a bit of a prod for me, because the tarot is sort of like, no, your year was very, very hopeful and very, very joyful, really, so stop being negative. I kind of feel like the tarot is having a little bit of a talk to me when I, you know, realised that this card did stalk me quite a bit. The deck that you finally crossed off your wish list in 2020. For me, this deck is the Philarchus Tarot. I had this on my wish list for quite a long time, and I kept almost getting it and then almost getting it, and then a few months went by, and then so many people started to talk about it, and it was just impossible to avoid it anymore. You know, it had me from the very, very beginning. You know, I knew I was gonna get it. It was one of those decks where you know you're gonna get it, it's just a matter of when and like budget and all of that. I think, you know, I was sort of dancing on the webpage for a few days, and then I was just like, for goodness sake, just order the deck. And yeah, it's so, so beautiful. And I didn't work with it a lot at first, because I did a walkthrough, which I still haven't actually even uploaded, so I will upload that at some point. And then I started working with it a bit, but I kind of wanted to delve into it this year, so I've sort of held off a little bit. And I don't know why my head works like that, but this year I am so, so excited to delve deeply into this deck, because last year I was so, so thrilled to finally pick it up. This is one of those decks that I am just so overjoyed to have in my collection, and that I'm gonna love for years to come, and was at the top of the wish list at the beginning of last year, and I'm just so glad that it came into my collection last year. Just an amazing deck. So that's the Philarchus Tarot that I am so thrilled to have in my collection this year. So the next prompt is the most worked with tarot deck in 2020 and why. And that is such a hard one. I'm not entirely sure what it is, in all honesty. Like, I'm sure there must be one that I have used far more than others. But because I tend to go like a cluster of months with a few decks, and then a cluster of months with another few decks, you know, I'm not entirely sure. So I'm gonna make an educated guess. But there are some absolute workhorses in my collection. One of them being like a Rider-Waite-Smith of some kind. Another one being the Sassurabito Tarot. Another one being the Lightseers Tarot. But let's just have a little think about which one was actually the one I used the most. Other than Rider-Waite-Smith in general, and talking about the Neo Rider, the Centennial, and my Radiant Wise Spirit, and my original RWS, the really yellowy one, all counted as one, you know, other than like RWS decks, I think the deck I used the most was the Sassurabito Tarot by Stasha Burrington. I love this deck. This deck is literally one of my favourite decks of all time. I use this so much. I use this in the spring, I use this in the summer, I used it in the autumn, and I used it in the winter. I didn't use it every day, but I used it a lot, like all through the year. Some days I'd just be like, oh, I feel like I should work with that deck, but you know what? I just want to work with the Sassurabito Tarot. I don't know what it is about it. When I first heard of this deck and I saw the imagery, I didn't like the black borders. I felt like it was really like closed in, and I just felt like the art wasn't really singing to me. And then it just started to sing, and I thought, you know, I just have to get this deck. And there are some cards that are less appealing to me than other cards, but there's something about working with this deck. I think it's the gilding I adore, the backs, all of the images really, even the ones that aren't as exciting like the Ace of Swords. The way it reads, I got called out by this deck quite a lot. I remember there were a few weeks when we were in lockdown and I was homeschooling the first time around, and I kept getting the Nine of Swords, and then the Ten of Swords, and then the Nine of Swords, and then the Ten of Swords. I was having all of this anxiety around homeschooling and all this stuff that was expected of us, and it was just this like perpetual kind of cycle that kept coming out. This deck is just so incredible for me. I feel like I do have a bond with this deck, and I love it. I love it so, so much. And I would never ever part with this, in all honesty. I think the book is really good, and I think I mentioned this as one of the decks that I really like to use in terms of card quality and thickness. And for me, I think this is the perfect deck because it's got a really nice thickness, it shuffles really beautifully, and it's a really good size to shuffle as well. I think it can shuffle like this, hand over hand, really nicely, and I think I can riffle shuffle with it as well. I'm not an amazing riffle shuffler though, I can't like riffle shuffle it back the other way, so day to day I tend to just overhand it. But yeah, this is just a beautiful deck for me, and I used it a lot, clearly. So prompt number 8 is the top 5 decks on your wish list right now. I've been having troubles with this one. I wrote out some of the decks the other day in a list, and then I kept adding to it, and I'm like, well, which one do I want more? And I'm like, I don't know. So I'm gonna say 5, not in order. I can't handle that right now. But know that there are a few more, and I might have forgotten one or whatever. I have a list and then I have another list, and I'm not very organised at keeping the list together. And when I do buy a deck, I might buy a deck that I really, really want, that I think is at the top of the list, but then forget there's another deck I really, really want that's also at the top of the list. I don't refer to the list every time I go to buy a deck, so then mostly I still stand by my purchase. But occasionally there's been a few times when I've bought it and I've been like, actually, I love that deck, I'm so glad I've picked it up, but you really want that one so much as well, and why didn't you just get that one and then get that other one you just got later? So my head is just, yeah, spinning with all these decks that I want. It really just comes down to like the art, doesn't it? And then how you hear about how the decks read and how they work for other people. And for me, I just absolutely fall in love with the artwork. I studied art, fine art at school for a time and in further education, and my mum is an art teacher and she was a lecturer at the National Gallery for like 10 plus years. My grandfather, her dad, was an artist, and it's just always been a massive part of my life. So art is so, so special for me. I'm just rabbiting on, I'm gonna get to the decks. So the decks that I've written here are one of the decks that is on this list I have just picked up the other day because I don't believe it's going to be available for that much longer. It's selling out, and once it's gone, it's gone. And that's the Lonely Dreamer 2nd edition. So I picked that up on Etsy the other day, so that doesn't count. So another deck that I'm very, very close to picking up is the Botan Tarot. I think the images are just stunning, and I just think about it all the time. And I think it's kind of got similarities to the Sassorabito, so knowing how much I love that deck, I just think I'm just going to fall wildly in love with it. Then also the Numinous Tarot, which is out of print at the moment but should come back into print at some point soon. I hope, I really, really hope. I was silly not to jump on it when it was available. I didn't really think that it was not going to be. I don't think I looked into it enough to figure out if it was going to not be. The Starlight Illuminated Tarot by Carol Herzer. I first saw this, I think, on Jen's Balanced Tarot's channel and fell in love with it. I sort of bookmarked the tab and knew that I wanted it, but I wasn't sort of looking at getting it right then and there. But it just keeps popping up again. I just keep needing it, you know? So that's going to happen at some point, I know it. The next one is This Might Hurt by Isabella Rotman, is that right? For a while I didn't think that I needed This Might Hurt because I've got the Modern Witch Tarot, but actually they're so different and I feel like my collection is kind of missing out without it. So I am going to pick that one up at some point, I'm sure. There are a few other decks that are mass market that I do want to get, but that are probably not going to go out of print anytime soon, like the Mary L Tarot. I would also love to get the Lovely Omens Tarot that's by Keely L or Keely Ellie, I'm not sure. It's like a pink deck and really cartoon-like illustrations. Yeah, I'm drawn to it. So I'm very, very excited to get that as well at some point. I also really do want to pick up the Melanated RWS clone from Little Red Tarot at some point this year, probably earlier on. So I'm gonna leave it there for today's video and carry on some more prompts in the next one. This has been so much fun to get involved with, and all of these prompts are getting me thinking. It's a bit like journaling really, and I think you learn so much more about yourself when you do this. So it's really, really exciting to take part, even if I am late. But I've read that it doesn't matter, you can do it at any time or dip in and out, so I'm just gonna not be too harsh on myself, and I'm just gonna go with it and enjoy it, because it's fun and that's what it's supposed to be. So thank you so much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this installment of some more of the prompts. If you did enjoy the video, do please click the like button and give the video a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more from me around tarot and spirituality, magic, witchcraft, those kinds of topics, then please do think about subscribing below, because I would love to see you here again. Thank you again for joining me, and I really hope that you stay safe and well, and I look forward to seeing you in another video really soon. Take care. Bye. Mwah.